Hello and welcome. My name is Andy Solkeld and this is my UKTC mission pack review. Today we are talking about round 8, which is mission 1-1, Recover the Relics. So round 8 typically means this would be the final where it has cut to a top 8. So you would play 5 rounds to begin with. Then you would play the Scouring as the quarterfinal, then Conversion as the semi-final, and then Recover the Relics as the final. And some tournaments may go longer, may go differently, but this is where that would come up in your days. So congratulations if you have made it this far. It's a fantastic showing, so well done to you. But regardless, you may be playing this on non-tournament setup, so I just want to be able to go through, talk about kind of my thoughts on this mission in particular. I myself haven't played it in a long time, but pulling this together really made me remember why both I'm not a huge fan of this mission, but also am. So it's a take and hold, so hold 1, hold 2, hold more. Very simple mission scoring. Every battle round, each player scores 1 VP for each opponent's unit they destroyed, to a maximum of 3 per battle round. So as long as you are killing things, you are scoring victory points. You only receive your Battleforge CP bonus if you control an objective in no man's land or in your opponent's deployment zone. And this is particularly hard for sisters, which I'll go into later. So because of the new CP changes, and where you gain them in your turn and your opponent's turn, if you do not have a forward deploying unit or the ability to redeploy or pre-game move onto an objective, you could be down 2 to 3 victory points, depending, and 2 to 3 command points, CP. And as a result, you just need to be aware of doing whatever you can to hold these objectives, because it is not possible to hold any of the no man's land's objectives from your deployment zone. So for sisters, as this is what I play, this means you typically spend for Carry Forth the Faithful to then be spending 1 CP to gain 2 CP, so a net +1. But at the same point, some factions may not have access to it and therefore could find themselves low on CP. So just be aware of this. It also means holding these is incredibly important. And one of them can be held from within a ruin. So the bottom one, that can be held from within a ruin with no windows in it. Therefore, you can hold that one safely. But the top one, you would have to be touching a windowed ruin and therefore could be shot through. So typically what you will see happen on this is, because it is hold 1, hold 2, hold more, you can heavily sway onto just holding 2 objectives. So your middle backfield objective and your, say, the bottom objective, because you can hold that safely, and then just put cursory little stuff, the unimportant stuff, at the top to prevent your opponent scoring more. Now, because of it being hold 1, hold 2, hold more, it means assaulting your opponent's primary needs you to assault it on 2 fronts to even deny them. Assume both people hold their halves of the board. The only reason to assault one of their objectives is if you feel that what you assault it with is going to live until your next command phase, where you would score a 12 for holding more, because they are still going to hold 1 and 2 on their turn. So what that means is, typically most players are going to score 32 on primary, and if they kill up to 13 units of their opponents, then they max primary. This is a very hard one to score 12s on, unless you completely collapse a flank, which is one of the things sisters are very good at doing, but it's just something to be aware of. If your army is not good at doing that, then you can play a very defensive and passive game and still score very highly. Also, because these 2 objective markers are holdable and very close to your deployment zone, this becomes a very, very good banners mission for every faction, as long as they can raise banners. And the reason it's important is because you raise 3 and then you just hold them for the entire game. And then that gets you 15 victory points. Obviously, you taking banners incentivizes your opponent to take them down. And with that, you need to just be mindful of it. But it can turn into a very standoffish game where both players just kind of like, you know what, I'm going to stay over here, you're going to stay over there, and we're just going to do our thing, score our points. You can then take it with... For sisters, there are a range of other secondaries that go well with this. So I typically will play this very passively. So I will take Banners, Shrine, and Leap of Faith. You could also take Sacred Ground, because Sacred Ground will score you 11 safely, which could be better than Banners if you think they're going to assault your banners. This is actually one where Sacred Ground probably comes up in the rankings from my point of view, just because you can, just because it's a very easy 11, and if you have banners, your opponent is very, very likely to attack 1 and try to deny it, whereas this just scores higher than it regardless. But that's something to kind of be aware of. You will want to carry forth the Faithful if you're playing Bloody Rose, purely because it allows you to get the CP. How I typically play this, even though I haven't played it in a long time, is I will typically try to crush one flank with Repentia, just going again and again and again straight in to try to cripple one flank. As you will see from the firing lane I have laid out in the yellow triangle, it's possible to actually shoot your opponent's home objective if they are touching the terrain from turn 1 using something with heavy bolters or 36-inch range. So you could actually drive your tank forward, Castigator, and just shoot their home objective. The way you overcome this is you actually don't stand things in the ruin. Because if you're off the ruin, you benefit from obscuring, whereas if you're touching it, you're suddenly... Yes, you get cover, but at the same point, this firing angle opens up, and it can cause some serious problems depending on what you're trying to hold that objective with. I kind of play into this, like as you will see from the way I've lined this up, I typically have my Retributors, my 2x10 Retributors, stood in the middle because they can walk out and they can just see everything, they ignore the dense cover in the middle, and then they can just shoot. And if they die, they pull them back behind obscuring, and then I res them forwards beyond, then I move the other out, and you just shoot, and you just repeatedly shoot, whilst your Repentia and your Zephyrim are harassing everywhere else. There are 2 really good staging ruins, as marked out with the blue here, but what I would try to do is layer up a collapse one flank with a Repentia as much as you can, and then on one turn go for the I'm going to collapse the other flank as well. So that's where you would kind of fly Zephyrim forward and then attack, and whilst the Repentia are just busy closing one flank completely. You just essentially what you're trying to do with this is just push the opponent as far away from all your scoring as possible. This has an incredibly open backfield. Just looking at the terrain, people can deep strike behind you, and preventing that, it pulls your assets away from the front line. But sisters have so many nonsense stuff, like you can quite easily just put a unit of Crusaders at the back, and then suddenly you've locked out that. You can put 4 Repentia somewhere, or trail back some Zephyrim that you're not using until later, and you just kind of keep them from doing it early. And then when you're kind of done and have done your attacking the front line, then what you do is you walk forwards past the ruins that you were holding the objectives from and into the other side. If they do choose to teleport back there for whatever reason, that you're then not in line of sight of them, and things like that. But that typically comes very late game, where they're going for a late play. Like, say it's against Tau and they're going for like an aerospace or something like that. You might leave one small unit behind, block them deep striking onto it, or teleporting using a cold star or something. But largely it's there to largely you can abandon your backfield once you have crushed a flank, because then you're still holding 2. You've just switched it which 2 you're holding. It is possible to sacrifice one objective. You can very easily, if your opponent is pushing hard, as I'm suggesting to collapse a flank, you can sacrifice it. And knowing when to sacrifice it is very important. And all you need to do then is feed OBSEC onto it to deny them a 12. However, because of the scoring in this, and as I said, you're going to hold 2 and get 32. If you look like you are going to, sorry, let me rephrase this. As a Sisters player, you have a lot of small units that die to a stiff breeze. I think I'm upwards of like 15, maybe 20 different units, which means my opponent is very likely going to score the full 15 on mission scoring. Okay? So if they get their 15 for killing 15 units of mine, which is very likely to happen, then that means the 32 plus the 15 that they get from that is already maxing their primary. And what that means is you can essentially give them 12s. You can let them have 12s because they're probably scoring it anyway. And so what if they collapse a flank? You just need to make sure you're scoring as much primary as you can. So you get your 32, and then you try to kill 13 of their units, or you try to get 112 yourself, and then suddenly you're in there. And you've equaled primary. So it's a very subtle counterplay, knowing that your units are going to die. Obviously, if you're a durable army or a low model count army, you won't give up as many, and therefore denying your opponent's 12s does become important. But as a Sisters player, I know that I need to, there is a point where I can say, right, they're already going to max primary, so I don't need to worry about them scoring 12s anyway. Doesn't matter. I just need to focus on scoring my points so that I score more than them. Clearly, don't let them take your shrine if that's what you're taking, but be aware of some of the counterplay that comes on this mission. As I said earlier, I would probably take shrine, leap, maybe sacred ground, maybe banners, depending on whether I think my opponent could take it. You could take a kill secondary or rod, but I think you are much safer playing a very passive game here, scoring your points and just keeping your opponent away from you. Boring, but it wins games. And anyway, yeah, that is round 8. Recover the relics, and we'll be back in the next episode where we'll cover the last mission. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll speak to you later.